Prison rackets have influenced Southern California street gangs for years. We will be showing a videotape rarely seen outside the courtroom. In the last 30 or so years, the feds have aggressively prosecuted mafia leadership and their associates. In addition to that, the Mexican Mafia, also known as La M, is experiencing a growing number of dropouts, disillusioned by a failing mafia code, and infighting within the organization that goes against the so-called rules. In this video, Sammy Vialba, also known as Negro, is joking around, but investigators say several days earlier he was in the hospital with a bleeding rectum from smuggling in homemade knives called shanks. In nearby holding cells, a dozen of his Mexican Mafia brothers, called carnales, seem relaxed, masking what's about to go down. As Black Dan Barrela paces the floor, there's bloodlust in the air. These dirty dozen from the Mexican Mafia, as they had been called in the media, are charged with 14 murders and attempted murders, and during this break in their federal RICO conspiracy trial there will be more bloodshed. Ruben Tupi Hernandez sits here in the corner with his back to the wall. One Mafia insider says Tupi is a nutcase. He spit on a federal marshal and cussed at the judge. Also, fellow carnales believe Tupi has been disloyal to his Mexican Mafia brothers. They call it politicking. This former Mexican Mafia associate explains Mafia reality.
Screw up one time, you make somebody mad, you're through. You know?
No matter who you are.
No matter who you are, yeah.
Black Dan walks out of the bathroom where he picked up his weapon. Now, Raymond Mendez, known as Champ, goes to the same toilet area. He reaches into the plumbing to find another shank. Investigators believe that the two weapons were hidden there days earlier by Negro Vialba. Jesse Moreno, called Pelon, gets up to check on federal marshals outside. It's his job to watch the door. Seconds later, Champ, his right hand holding the weapon behind his back, comes out of the bathroom, glances toward the door, and then comes straight at Tupi with a shank to the stomach. Black Dan moves in while Tupi is taken to the floor and stabbed 17 times. In the adjacent holding cells, Negro Vialba and other mafia cronies listen to the sounds of attack. Tupi tries to roll up into a ball to protect himself. Black Dan tries to hold his arms back so Champ can get a clear shot at his throat and heart. Tupi, a multiple murderer himself, now fights for his own life. Federal marshals finally pushed through the door and pepper spray the attackers, saving Tupi from death. Later, Tupi, Black Dan, Champ, Pelone, and 6 other Mexican Mafia defendants are all convicted and sent to maximum security federal prisons for life without parole. Along with other recent racketeering convictions, more than 40 Mexican Mafia members during the last 5 years have been sentenced to long federal prison terms. FBI agent Jim Myers says the convictions have certainly disrupted the gang.
Work the same way they did before. Their criminal activities have been deterred for a period of time, but it's an ongoing battle with them.
Orange County, prosecutors claimed a victory last July with the sentencing of Romo to 20 years in state prison. Romo was caught with 260 kilos of cocaine. But what's more significant is that in pleading guilty, Romo became the first to sign a declaration admitting there's a Mexican Mafia in California. So under state law, a Mafia carnal can now be prosecuted under the Street Terrorism Act, just like any other gang member. Deputy DA Jeff Brisson calls it the first chink in the armor. And Ferguson says because of Romo's admission in some instances, state prison sentences for Mafia members will now be tougher than federal time, not to mention now greater restrictions on Mafia parolees and probationers.
Now to tremendous sentence enhancements that they never had before. Probably the most crucial of which is conviction of being a street gang member as a strike now in California.
And Ferguson says because of Romo's admission in some instances, state prison sentences for Mafia members will now be tougher than federal time. Not to mention now greater restrictions on Mafia parolees and probationers.
A much stronger power to dismantle the gang than ever before.
But insiders say, since Godfather Joe Pegleg Morgan died in prison of cancer 9 years ago, La M has done plenty to dismantle itself.
When Strike died, everything seemed like a bunch of chaos. Everybody wants to be a rooster.
Mike Eisen, a feared Mafia executioner known as Acha or the Axe, was a strong candidate to succeed Morgan, but a nasty heroin habit brought him here to San Francisco's Skid Row. 20 months ago, he got into a fight outside this sleazy bar, and died at this nearby intersection, chased and beaten to death with pool cues. In the meantime, insiders say younger mafia henchmen such as Daniel Cuate Grajeda and Rene Boxer Enriquez had moved into the mafia upper echelon. But law enforcement investigators believe Benjamin Topo Peters assumed Mexican Mafia leadership by 1998. But not anymore. 21 months ago, his body was driven in a 7-car motorcade to a gravesite at a Covina Hills cemetery. Peters also died of cancer while in prison. And one former mafia shot-caller says Topo had no more credibility in the organization. Topo's stepson had turned out to be a rat, he says, and Topo refused to have him killed. So at the funeral of the one-time reputed boss of the state's most feared prison gang, all the mourners could fit under one small tent. The shot-caller explains, "We were going to kill Topo anyway, so he did us a favor by dying. No one cared." This former associate says it's all about the one clear lesson he learned from the mafia.
Everybody uses everybody, and everybody's expendable. No matter who you are, you're expendable. They just don't know it.
Meanwhile, law enforcement sources say more and more members are dropping out of the Mexican Mafia. At the same time, they say the mafia books are open again, and the group is recruiting new talent as the cycle of deceit and betrayal continues.